So welcome back everybody. We're going to try something new today. We're going to do a little bit of voiceover and talking and explaining throughout the video, but keep in mind this channel was never about me standing in front of the camera yakking. It's mainly about working. So we'll just hit some of the high points throughout the video, explain what's going on, but everything else should be self-explanatory. So as you can see, I'm unloading a little bit of scrap steel here. We're trying to do a budget build vertical smoker. My first one ever for my friend right there. So to start off with, everybody asks me about these propane tanks. How do you know they're safe? This one's been vented for a couple of years, and as you can see, I always fill them up with water before I go cutting on them. So let's figure this build out. I have all the plans pretty much in my head, nothing drawn out. We're just gonna build as we go. Now you're going to see me use these magnets a lot throughout this build. Oh my goodness, are they so handy for moving around these big sheets of steel by myself. And yeah, I'm going to cheat and use my mini excavator to be a big helping hand moving all this heavy stuff around. So, y'all have seen this tool. This is my xTool MetalFab right here. This is one of those laser cleaners. This thing's gonna save my butt throughout this build right here, taking this old rusty scrap steel and us not having to buy new expensive metal. And look at the way this thing cleans it up. All right, so we're going to use the CNC plasma here to cut out some of these square pieces for the Firebox. Talk about super easy, beautiful cuts. This keeps me from having to use the circular saw and cut out all these big pieces. And we need to build this smoke box first, or the Firebox, before we go cutting on the tank, because we need to know the overall dimensions and size and how to notch the tank out properly for it. So I'm going to be using Fusion 360. I'm really starting to get the hang of this program. And can you guess what I'm building right here? This is going to be the front flip down door for the Firebox, and I'm matching up some cutouts to some stainless steel dampers that I bought online. Basically just vents. So I'm tacking it all up. I want to do that first to make sure all the pieces fit good. And I forgot to tell y'all, we're building this Firebox out of 1/4-inch steel. Really, really thick, shouldn't warp. And because we're not doing an insulated Firebox, again, budget build right here, the thicker the metal we can go with, the more insulated it will be, the slower the wood will burn, and it'll just retain heat well. All right, y'all, take it easy on me with the welds. I'm not a professional, and I've got a tremendous amount of welding to do. Some of them don't look the world's best, but I can promise you this thing is not coming apart. This is one area I think I wish I would have done a little differently. My thought was to have the door to tilt down so you could put like an aluminum pan or something underneath and just sweep the ash out into it and let the door act as a ramp. But If I have to do this again in the future, like whenever I build mine, for example, I think I'm going to make the door swing out left or right, but either way, this wound up working just fine. So what I'm doing right here is building a real simple latch, and we can actually bend that hook, which is going to hook on the inside of the steel, to adjust down the road, because we are going to put some insulation, basically felt around the outside edge just for sealing off grills, so the thickness and door tension is going to change. So I just made up something nice, quick and simple to keep from having to buy even more latches, and this will allow us to fine tune and adjust by backing that bolt in and out. And that'll basically change the latch tension on the inside, or we can bend a couple of pieces. Now talk about a big helping hand right here, a laser. This wound up being the perfect tool for the job for me, you know, drawing lines around curves, notching out the end of the tank for the Firebox. The laser is definitely the way to go. Yep, you guessed it. The excavator and that magnet is going to be a helping hand in the shop again. That Firebox has already become so heavy because it's had a 1/4 inch steel. I didn't feel like picking it up or throwing my back out. I don't know what I would do on this particular job without this excavator, especially whenever it comes time to position that tank on top of that Firebox. So this right here wound up being one of the most difficult coats I've ever done. And you can see I just got lit up by a hot piece of metal. It stuck to my skin there. But look at the way that I have to notch and coat this out to fit around the tank because I want some A-frame legs on the end. So I just have to take my time. This took quite a while, just constantly eyeballing it, drawing with the marker, going back and forth to the bench, cutting it with a cutoff disc, grinding out the curvature of the tank with the grinder itself and a flap disc. Took a while, but I wanted to get as close of a perfect fit as I possibly could so the weld would look nice and these would weld into the tank nice and strong. Don't want to do this again. This was another not so fun part of this tank build. There was all kinds of holes right here where fittings used to be, and I had to do a tremendous amount of weld to fill all these holes in and then grind them smooth. Something else I didn't really show on camera but took a very, very long time. All right, so this is worth explaining right here. You can see I'm welding stainless rod into these basically going to be grate holders right here. This is where you're going to hang your food. This vertical smoker is mainly built for hanging sausage. That's why we're welding stainless rods in. And yes, we're welding stainless to mild steel, but as long as we keep all this coated with oil, it shouldn't rust. But we wanted the rods to be stainless so they can clean up nice and easy. Should never rust out in the middle where you're going to drape the sausage over. And you're going to see in a little bit, I'm actually going to put some expanded metal grates on top of these so you can cook other things like ribs, Boston butts. So this can be a dual use smoker. All right, once again, that laser level is helping me out. Now I'm trying to set where I want all of these grates to go. All right, this is what I was telling y'all about earlier. I'm gonna make some removable expanded metal grates to go inside of these sausage hanging racks to basically turn these into cooking racks. You can put, again, your chickens, your ribs, your Boston butts, whatever you want on there. I really wound up liking this design. Whenever I finally build my vertical smoker, this is what I'm going to incorporate into mine. So here's an issue you run into with steel like this, a tank. When you cut it, say for the door, the metal wants to spring back out. It doesn't want to stay in its circular form anymore. But that's because we just disrupted that by cutting into it. So how I can fix that is, I'm going to take a ratchet strap and actually bend the door back into shape and then weld a couple of rods in so the door can never warp or expand back out. And we should wind up with a perfect fit if I do this correctly. And as you can see, that's a good enough fit for me. And yep, we've got the laser back out to make quick cleanup. I wound up zapping the rust on the entire inside of this tank. This was the right tool for the job. So as you can see by the look on my face, I was pretty pleased with this cut right here. The plasma made quick work of cutting that, and that was a free-handed circle right there. I thought it turned out great. So one of the last things to whip up here is a very heavy duty ash grate. So I'm just going to build it out of thick rebar. This should last a really long time before it rusts out or burns through. Should get years of good use out of this thing. So one very important thing for a smoker is to make sure we have like a door gasket door seal. This is made just for smokers, and what this is going to do is keep air in, basically heat in, and make this grill and slash smoker so much more efficient. I decided to go ahead and put this on the Firebox as well. That way the dampers control the draft, no gaps. Okay, it's time to fire this thing up, our first burn in. And I'm doing this because it's so damp outside. I want to heat the metal up. I want to get all the water and moisture off of it because we're actually going to be painting it here in a second. So first burn, here we go. Good time to test and see if the Firebox is the right size and if the temperature is good. So after a few pieces of wood, I'm happy to say perfect smoking temp, right around 225 to 250. So let's throw all the grates and everything else on the inside because we want to get those dried off as well. And let me show you how we're going to paint the outside with a very special paint made just for high heat. All right, here it is, a ceramic high heat paint, 2,000 degrees. This is going on the outside only. Obviously, we don't want this anywhere near around our food, and this should never burn off, even on the Firebox. Smokers just don't get that hot. You don't burn that big of a fire. Another very important step, now that the inside's nice and hot, you know, several hundred degrees, I'm coating every bit of metal on the inside, including the racks, the grates, with a spray oil. So as this grill cools down, it absorbs all that oil. The owner will need to do this, you know, a couple times a year, and this will keep the inside nice and clean and keep it from rusting. This is also a very important step.